Jen Mall, and welcome to Nurse Connect. I am an RN and a board certified nurse coach. I believe that connecting with others is essential to living a happy and fulfilled life, and that sharing our stories not only helps us to heal ourselves, but also helps others by inspiring hope and optimism. I am so grateful to share stories of these incredible nurses on their journey, and I encourage you to find a way to share yours too. Thanks for listening in.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Jen Mall with Nurse Connect Podcast, and I'm happy to have Ellie on with me. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, I always have everybody start out with sharing about you because I could give this beautiful intro, but honestly, I just feel that you can tell your story best. So why don't you take us back? How did you become a nurse and kind of what has been your journey to date?
Yeah, I've been a nurse for about 9 years, but come from a family of nurses. My
Oh,
mom
cool.
went back to school as a nurse. We migrated
Oh, where from?
as a family from Russia.
Oh, wow.
And so she had a lot of kids. There was 5 of us. And as she kind of learned the language, my dad was providing. Once I hit high school, she went back to school. So I got to really see the journey through my mom
Oh, that's
of what nursing school
incredible.
looks like. Yeah, it was like front row seats in a different way. And
Yeah.
at that point, you have no excuse of like, I can
Like
do
she
this.
can do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my oldest sister was a nurse, and kind of paved that way. And then the cards fell into, my lap as well. And I was definitely a little resistant as the middle child, did not want to
Mm.
do nursing for a little bit. Because I kind of deviated towards like I want to work with nutrition or more soul
Oh.
care, and then realized I took a summer off just to work at a rehab center where it was
Mm.
drugs and alcohol, and realized, wow, this is actually a profession that can really integrate the heart, the mind, the body,
Mm.
get to sit with people's stories. Because the biggest thing that I saw at the rehab center was there was just not enough time for people to sit with these men
Yeah.
and hear their stories or talk about the pain, because it was all about detox and getting you,
Mm.
flipping your mind and getting you healed and onto the road of recovery.
Yeah.
There wasn't actually much support specifically at this site. And so kind of realizing, okay, this is actually a really great path forward where it's very integrated, it's holistic, it really honors the whole person. And so that's when I decided I'm gonna do it. Like,
Good for
yeah, this is
you.
it. And so went to nursing school and started working at the bedside for the first 4 years at a
Mhm.
interstate hospital here in Minnesota, where I'm from. And so did not expect to land there, but that's just what I was told, is like,
Yeah.
as a new nurse, that's what you do, that's how you start. And so I think that was a great experience for me to realize, like, I really need to grow a backbone for myself
Mm.
personally. Because you see people from all walks of life
Yeah.
and just very different personalities, different people's stories, different families. And it was a little bit of a shocking, like
Mm.
jolting experience for me in a way where I kind of grew in my bubble, and in my community. And then all of a sudden you see all these people and you
Uh,
see them kind of on their worst day too.
of
It's usually
course.
it's their crisis moment. And
Mm.
that's where you're supporting them and
Hmm.
helping them through. And so I think in a way it really expanded my compassion.
Hmm.
Um, but in all honesty, it also helped me realize, like, I need to grow a backbone. I need to have a stronger shell and not be so permeable where people, their words or their actions affect me as
Mm.
much.
Yeah.
Because I started hitting a lot of burnout at that point
Yeah, I
too. It
bet.
was tough. Yeah. It was tough to keep up with
Hmm.
just people's emotions, the negativity. Because I think I didn't know how to manage my own negativity for a little bit,
Mm.
and like just either kept moving forward, got busy, didn't really know how to manage my own emotional world very
Yeah.
well. And so work was a beautiful place for me to just forget about my life for a little bit and take care of others
Hmm.
and lean on that leg. And then realizing, okay, this is maybe not as sustainable for me. And so
Yeah.
about 4 years into it, one promise that I made to myself was, as a nurse, I want to definitely give back to my community. So as an immigrant myself, I really wanted to do either something globally or just knowing that my family came from poverty, I wanted to give
Yeah.
back.
Wow.
Um,
And how
yeah,
did you do that?
I had a couple of options. So I was kind of leaning towards either Peace Corps or doing something
Mm.
that's more faith-based.
Hmm.
And looking through my options, decided to go with an organization that was faith-based, that does medical missions with volunteers. And so I signed up for 3 months and ended up staying for a year.
That's incredible. Where did you
And
go?
that was so much fun because it was a lot of training on tropical disease and medicine,
Yeah.
but also we would just go into different communities
Okay.
and set up medical clinics, like mobile
Okay.
clinics. So we would get the word across. So whether it was like 6 weeks in India, we just gather people and travel from town to town and provide medical care to people who, again, don't have access to doctors. There's no doctors. Slum communities, very poor. And it's a lot of people, a lot of kids that need immunizations, a lot of adults with either cataracts or wounds or unmanaged diabetes, as well as just, again, tropical disease, infections, and they don't know how to move forward.
Yeah.
And so it's a beautiful blending of Eastern medicine and Western medicine, especially with the teams that I worked with, because it was international teams as well. Everyone was welcome as long as you could speak the language and have the skill set.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was, again, a very eye-opening,
I bet.
exhilarating
Yeah.
adventure. It was so much fun, but I also had to learn so much so quickly.
I bet. Wow.
Mhm.
And what language did you speak when you were there?
So we usually worked with a lot of interpreters.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Because I, you
I
said when you
think,
spoke the language, I was like, oh my gosh, you know.
yeah, no, no, no. I
That's
wish I could say that. No, so it's all English, and then we had
okay.
interpreters. So the
Yeah.
assignments were anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months, in
Mhm.
that span of a year. So just kind of traveled all over with different teams, and each time it was a different team.
And where did you go anywhere besides India?
Yeah, there were a couple of other places. So it was Mozambique for about a
Oh,
month
wow.
in Africa. And that was fun because they speak Portuguese. So I leaned a little bit on my Spanish, but
Oh,
I
neat.
can't say I speak very well. But that was super fun.
Uh-huh.
Running dental clinics there. And then 3 months in the Philippines in a slum
Wow.
community outside of Manila.
Mhm.
That was my longest assignment. And also spent, I think it was 3 weeks out on a ship where we traveled around Papua New Guinea, just to some of the
Wow.
remote locations where they couldn't get to the islands. And so we would
That's
go by
incredible.
boat. Mhm.
Wow, what an experience. Now that I would imagine that when you're already established in your life, 4 years into being a professional nurse, how did that work with just being able to kind of put things on pause and do this incredible outreach in these communities? That's amazing.
Yeah, that whole year, I guess 6 months was it stretched me definitely. Because for me,
Yeah.
knowing that it was a faith-based organization, I
Mhm.
definitely felt pulled by God to do that. And so that I
Beautiful.
really leaned on my faith.
Yeah.
But also it was just one of those opportunities where I was young. I was 23 at the time.
Wow.
And so it was kind of a now or never.
Oh my gosh, that's
And
amazing.
I had to take it. And
Yeah.
so just telling myself, hey, I'm gonna quit my job. I did try to, again, the plan was only 3 months. So I was
Hmm.
gonna come back and just, pick the pieces back up again. But then I'm glad it worked out for me to stay for that full year, because it was just a year of beautiful growth and really stretched
Yes.
me and made me even more like fall in love with holistic health and how much we
Mm.
need the whole body, whole person, whole heart in the healing journey.
Oh, wow. That is incredible. And I don't think it's something that a lot of people could do. So
Mhm.
kudos for you for like trusting and leaning on your faith and recognizing this was something that you really felt called to do and you did it. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I look back now and I'm like, I don't know how I did that. I don't think the current me would have the guts, but
Yeah. So how did you reintegrate back in? Did you go right back into a bedside role or what was kind of your process after you completed that?
yeah, I think I was nervous about coming back. I
Mhm.
didn't Once that my year was up, I wasn't sure if I was going to come back, and then felt called to come home, and so decided to get back. And I did take a little bit of time just to reintegrate and
Mhm.
like cushion myself from even the culture shock, because I was living in
Yeah.
really poor communities, sleeping on floors, like
Oh,
living
wow.
in the slums with the people.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and so it was a little jolting again to come home and realize, okay, this is what I
Mhm.
grew up with, but it's so different and I'm not used to it
Mhm.
after being in such a saturated, impoverished area for a year. So I took a couple of months just to I was back with my parents and took some time to really reintegrate. It was interesting for me to notice a lot of my communities were kind of, I think they esteemed the act, but it was almost like I was a little untouchable, or people
Really?
put me on a pedestal, which was a little challenging for me.
Yeah.
I felt like I actually became a little more connected to the humanness of people.
Mm,
But then all of a sudden, because it was this big act that was bold,
mm,
it was beautiful for people to be inspired by it, but it was almost like okay, there was a little bit of a distance in it, or a disconnect. So I did feel like I had to push through that a little bit, but then also wanted some isolation and some time alone, because it's just your mind is going in through, so many so many cultural changes.
yeah. And I wonder, did you struggle at all with that? It wouldn't be called survivor's guilt in this situation, but like that, like the feeling like, oh my God, I have all of this. And you've seen the worst of the worst of humanity in some senses, of like living in those situations and being so incredibly impoverished and not having access to medical care, let alone, and food and shelter and all those things. And then you come back and you're just in it with all the
Mhm.
normal things. How was that for you?
Yeah, I definitely turned into more of a minimalist
Hmm.
afterwards, and just got rid of a lot of that consumer mindset that just naturally fell
Yeah.
off. I think one thing that cushioned me with my mindset to not go too extreme was realizing the care that I was providing in the third world countries.
Mm,
I think I caught myself about halfway on my assignments, was realizing if I try to live like them, or say, hey, I want to be like you as much as possible, it's coming from a good place where I'm trying to connect
mm.
with them. But actually, my role here is to call them into abundance and say, hey, there's a better way. You shouldn't stay here. And so I think that was my saving grace, is
Wow.
realizing if I'm going to come in and try to support people in this environment, how can I connect with them on a human
Mm,
level and say, hey, I'm just as human as you. Because there was a little bit of that, of
yeah.
people think you're more prestigious, or because you have that knowledge or skill set,
Hmm.
they treat you a little bit better.
Mm,
Um, so kind of breaking down those walls, but then also realizing, like, if I get down on that level, I need to be careful to not say that this is where I want you to land.
yeah.
Because that's not what we're here for. We want to provide care so that you can know that you're worth getting good care. You're worth having
Absolutely.
a good life. You're worth stepping forward and calling your kids in the next generation to step forward too.
Mm,
I think that helped a little bit. Just to kind of, yeah, recognize that for myself too, of that was such a great experience, but how can I be grateful for what I have now? And then how can I move forward and
yeah.
keep calling myself into abundant living and really living in the present
Yeah.
with what I have.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So then where has your nursing journey been the last few years?
Yeah, I think after working in mobile clinics, I definitely got more inspired to do clinic care and just
Mm,
more of that outpatient care. And so I worked at a rheumatology infusion clinic for a couple of years after that, and started learning about the immune system. And again, it was really beautiful because I loved that patient population, because it's the same people that typically that come back, and you get to
yeah.
hear their stories, and they become like family. And so that was truly a joy of just getting to hear their stories and getting to know them really well.
Hmm.
And then after a couple of years of doing that, again, there was just this thing in my heart of I just want to help a little bit deeper and really provide that soul care for people. Like
Mm,
that's always been my favorite part of any role, is just to sit down and listen to people's stories. I think there's so much healing in that. And so a couple of years after that, I started looking into either going in for becoming a counselor or some
mm,
other route. And so I had a couple of options, and that's when I, like, through a Google search, the integrative nurse coach academy popped up
hmm.
for nurse coaches. And I had never heard of that experience or that role before. And it was around the same time when I was again hitting burnout, wanted to get out of nursing. I took a trip to Colorado and started looking for jobs there, because
Mm,
I just wanted to get out, and like mountains are my
yeah.
happy place. That's where I love it the most there. That's where I can breathe a little easier.
Uh-huh.
It's my sense of adventure. And so I
Beautiful.
was going to move out there just as it was 2019, right before COVID.
Oh,
So I was seriously considering it, looking into it. and saw a couple of roles for nurse coaches. And I had just never heard of that role, never knew what that was. It was totally new for me. And again, same time, learned about the Inca program. And so I just on the fly decided to sign up
Good for you.
because I realized, okay, this is actually a great jump and launch from nursing into the soul care that I want to provide without me
Yes.
having to go back to school
Yeah.
traditionally. And
Beautiful.
so went that route, went to school for, it was a year program. And then at the same time was getting different certifications for trauma care,
Mm.
nervous system care, somatic therapy, and just how you actually integrate the body into healing your mind and not just working with your mind. 'Cause so many of us get stuck living in our minds
Yes.
instead of reintegrating and being fully present with not just our minds, but our bodies and our souls.
So those the trauma-informed care, somatic work, we're hearing a lot more about that. So can you share a little bit about what that means and how are you integrating it into your own work?
Yeah, it's a very beautiful experience for people to walk through. It's very gentle.
Mm,
But what it does is it's a way for people to again get out of their heads. If you think
mm,
of trauma, I use trauma very loosely. Trauma is anything that kept you, made you feel unsafe and brought a big emotion where you weren't able to process it. And so now it's just something that you're carrying. And
mhm,
so somatic therapy or trauma informed care is something that reintegrates your body into the experience. Sometimes when something happens to us and we can't process it because it was too much or too fast,
mhm,
whether it was because we were too little and we couldn't process it or we didn't have bandwidth to at the time, what happens is we either internalize some of that and we overanalyze, or we externalize and we over spiritualize.
mm,
And so that's where we can sometimes get stuck in our head. And a lot of formal, traditional, older ways of therapy was just working with your mind and your head and your
yes.
brain.
Talk it
And we
out.
didn't realize, yeah, that your body is actually a big part of processing some of that because those we really carry that. Our bodies carry a story with every
Mhm,
reflex and emotion that we have. And sometimes we cut our emotions short and don't allow them to get processed or fully create that pathway and live it, kind of ride that wave
right.
for us to find the freedom. And so we get stuck in our minds of, well, you shouldn't feel this way, or why is this hurting so much? Or you're so weak for going through this, instead of actually allowing your body to go through that
Right.
and release it and be free from it.
Mm. Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard to do the work, but it is so important. And so having the tools and resources like you're mentioning, um, is just so, like you said, freeing and allowing those emotions to go through and to work out and move out of your body. When you're working with somebody, what does that look like in practice? Is that like when we're getting into our bodies, how do you kind of do that? Because as nurses, we like to okay, how do we actually do that? What are the tangible steps? Or do you have any suggestions on how somebody could kind of start doing that work?
Yeah. I think sometimes when people think of trauma-informed care or incorporating the body, they're afraid of having these deep crying sessions or
Mm,
losing control, or they're already losing a lot of control with either like crying episodes that they can't necessarily control or panic attacks.
mhm,
Beautiful thing about this is it's a very gentle technique where we never want to push you out of your comfort zone or over the edge. And so we work with your window of tolerance in your nervous system. What can you tolerate in this moment? And so it really depends on the client and where they're at. Usually, if this was our first session, I would start really, really slow. And if something is coming up, we either gently drop into your body and use your body as a resource of, hey, where is this being highlighted right now in your
mm,
body? If you're feeling sad, is it showing up in your jaw? Are you feeling tension in your shoulders? Is there burning in your chest? What's happening right now so we can anchor you to the present moment? Something that's always with you, which is your body, which was also there when something that maybe created that sadness was there as well.
yeah.
So we can anchor with our body, but also that sometimes doesn't feel safe enough for people either.
Mm,
And so we can anchor with the five senses of something outside of us. What are you looking at right now? What color is it?
mm.
What texture is it? And just anchoring ourselves, resourcing to actually build some of that capacity. Because again, when trauma happened, it was too much too fast and we couldn't anchor, we couldn't resource. And so we jumped out of our body, out of that
Mhm.
embodied experience into our head.
Yes.
And now we're just looping and looping and looping. And so it kind of breaks that loop. And it's that simple question of, hey, can you drop into your body? Or
Mm,
can you notice something around you?
yeah.
If that feels too big, sometimes we'll even start with our breath. That's a really beautiful invitation. It's something that there's always enough air, and we can always control how much we're breathing in, how much we're breathing out, what's comfortable, what's not. And so just inviting people to just sit with their breath, maybe making it a little bit deeper, maybe dropping it a little bit more into their stomach so that that
Mm.
diaphragm is expanding a little bit more, and then inviting them to sit with that breath for a little bit and keeping that as an anchor.
Can I ask you to walk me through a little breathwork practice like that? Pretty much exactly how you explained it. That was beautiful. But I wonder if this is an invitation for the person who's listening to just take a moment with your breath, and how can you do that really simply?
Yeah, I would love to.
Okay.
Yeah, and I noticed that you already placed your hand on your heart, which is
Yeah.
such a beautiful way
Yeah.
that sometimes you can anchor yourself again. So if you
Mhm.
guys want to, I
Yeah.
definitely invite you to either put your hand on your heart. Some people, if you're feeling shallow, maybe putting it even right on your sides.
Oh, yeah.
That way
Estrogen's
you can,
good too.
yeah, whatever
Mhm.
feels more soothing for you.
Mm.
Then I would invite you to close your eyes or lower your gaze, focusing your attention on the breath without changing the pace or the rhythm, just keeping it comfortable for yourself. Just noticing the way your chest expands and rises. What it feels like at the front of the chest as you take a deep breath in and out. And again, noticing the sides of your chest with the next inhale and exhale. Moving to the back of the chest, noticing any sensations as you take a deep breath in and out. Just noticing where you're feeling any sensations in your body the most. Maybe you're feeling pins and needles, tingling, pressure. And I invite you to channel your breath to that area. And adjusting any micro movements that might feel good for you. And again, just dropping into your body, noticing what are you feeling right now? What emotions are coming up? And if it's something that feels soothing and good, I invite you to imagine yourself stretching it over your body like a piece of elastic fabric, making it a little bit bigger so that more of you can feel it. And if it's something that is uncomfortable or unpleasant, imagine yourself trying to shrink it or crumple it down, making it a little bit smaller, maybe taking up a little bit less space. And if it's something that's uncomfortable, again, I invite you to maybe find something that does feel soothing in the body, or maybe something that you don't even have, you're not bringing much attention to. Be the back of your elbow, your earlobes, back of your knees, and just centering your breath to that area. Just sitting with your breath for a few more moments, knowing that you can take in as much air as you would like. That you are held and supported by the chair behind and underneath you. And all that you have to do at this moment is breathe. Slowly reorienting yourself to the room. Maybe bringing some micro movements in, wiggling your toes, your fingers, moving your head from side to side. When you're ready, just very gently start to bring some light back in through your eyes. And come on back.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
pleasure.
You have such a calm and soothing voice, and I appreciate you going with the flow as I asked, kind of put you on the spot to do that. That was beautiful, and I think I hope that the person listening can just take that couple of minutes for themselves to just be safe in their bodies and just breathe.
It's beautiful how quickly it can happen too.
Yeah.
So often when we're dysregulated, we don't know what we're feeling or what we need. And this is just such a simple way to come back to yourself.
Mm.
And again, there's some options there, which is what I love to offer as well, just to create some agency for people. Because often when big emotions happen or when we feel like we don't know where we're at, what do I need in this moment? I don't even
I don't
know
know.
what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just it empowers people to come back and realize, okay, I have choice. And both
Yes.
of them are, neither is right or wrong. They're not high stakes. And it's very empowering to actually have that choice
Yeah.
and move
Yeah.
from there.
Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you
Mhm.
again for sharing that. And I think we've got a couple more minutes, and I would just ask if, is there anything else that's on your heart that you want to share today that's coming up for you?
There's a lot of work that I do around the body. But just one thing that I notice with a lot of people is it's not just connection with yourself, it's also how we connect with others
Mm.
and whether we have capacity to connect with others. So even with my own journey of burnout, realizing whenever I was burnt out, I would isolate, or everyone felt like a burden at that point, or I felt like a burden. And so just how often some of the trauma or pain happens because of others or some of the messaging we hear, a lot of healing also happens interrelationally. I love the idea, or like this example that I heard, that when you're out in the ocean for days and you're parched
Mm.
and you're scorched from the sun and the salt hurts, the first thing you want out is to get out of the water. But when you're rescued, the first thing you need is actually water.
Yes.
And so sometimes people might not feel safe, or your nervous system doesn't have the capacity for them.
Hmm.
But the best way to move forward is if we learn to connect with ourselves, we actually build our capacity to connect with others.
For
So it's
sure.
such a beautiful integrated experience. And that's where a lot of the people pleasing falls away, the
Hmm.
burnout cycles, a lot of our tendencies to try to control or manipulate, or where we get frustrated. A lot of that can just really fall into place. It's
Mm.
like an adjustment or an alignment. That's
Yeah.
really fun for me to see as a practitioner. just seeing how it kind of ripples into other people's lives, whether it's your patients, your family, your loved ones. It really is a deep work
Yeah.
that affects so many people.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mhm.
that's so true. Because a lot of my burnout was birthed from people pleasing and
Mhm.
over giving. And so when I burned out and I had to pause and reevaluate and set up boundaries and all that stuff, now that I take care of myself so well, I can give so much more, like so much more
Mm.
lovingly and connect better with others. And it's from a place of love and wanting to connect versus a feeling of needing to, or it's my job to do that. So
Mhm.
yeah, I love your analogy and the work that you're doing. It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you so much. I enjoyed as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So where can people connect with you?
I am on freetolivewellness.com. That's where a lot of my services are offered and just more of my work. Also, I'm more connected on Instagram. So my handle is Ellie Monj. So ELLIEMONJ, or on Facebook with the same handle. Or you can also always search freetolivewellness.com or free to live wellness at Facebook.
Awesome. Awesome. Well,
Mhm.
thanks again, Ellie. I really appreciate your time today. And your beautiful little breath work practice was exactly what I needed. And I know others will connect with it too. And thanks for sharing your story and your time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.